Good morning. This morning we're going to talk about the different join types in ACL. You will need to know from the beginner's course already what the join command is and two of the different types. But I'm going to talk to you again about those two different types just as a bit of revision, and I'm going to talk to you about another join type you haven't learned, and then we'll still talk about a few other things as well regarding joins. Okay, so let's just jump into it. Let's first talk about some of the theory. So firstly, I have two tables. So I've got a table called payroll and another table called employee master. And the payroll table, of course, contains a list of employees I've paid, and the employee master file contains a list of employees that I should pay. And I decide for some reason to do an unmatched primary join, where payroll is the primary table and employee master the secondary table. Now, I have no audit objective here in mind. I'm just going over the technical mechanics of how this command works, how this join type works. So what ACL would do is it would go to the primary table, which I've decided to make payroll, and it will then check the first record in payroll to see, based on the key, if it can find that key in the corresponding table. So the key field here, the unique identifier for an employee, would be employee number. So I'm going to say, or ACL would say, okay, here's employee number one in in the payroll table. Can I find it in the employee master table? It has a look. It does indeed find it. Now, because I'm doing an unmatched primary join, I'm looking for employee numbers that do not appear in the master file. So what will happen is that I will not record, or ACL will not put into my new results table, the one at the bottom of my screen, the details for employee number one, because they do have a match. So now ACL moves on to the next record in the primary table. So it says, right, here's employee number two in payroll. Let's see if we can find it in the employee master file. And of course, it doesn't see it. But because it doesn't see it, it's going to record this information in the new table, because we specifically, right now in this example, are doing an unmatched primary join. So there you can see employee number two, the gross pay amount is 3,000. Now, of course, ACL, when we do an unmatched primary join, will not pull through any details from the secondary table, because it's pointless. And there's no pay per period column in my results table here, because there is no pay per period for employee number two. We are looking for employees that do not appear in the other table. So we shouldn't be surprised that pay per period does not appear in the result. Okay, so that's the mechanics of the unmatched primary join. And of course, sorry, I forgot about this one. The last one, employee number three, we check, does it appear in the other table? Indeed, it does. Because we are doing the unmatched primary join type, we ignore that one for this particular exercise. All right, let's talk about matched primary. So matched primary is where we look for employee numbers or whatever the key is in both tables. So let's see, is employee number one in the other table? Yes, it is. Because we are looking for matched primary, in other words, things that are in the primary table that have matches that appear in the secondary table, ACL will record in the results table this employee number one and its details, right, or whatever details we choose to pull through. Remember, in the real world, you choose which fields you want in your results table. I've got very limited fields in this example, so I've chosen all of them. But in the real world, if you've got 100 fields in the one table and 200 in the other, it doesn't make sense to have a total of 300 fields in the new table. It's just too much. You would need to be a bit more selective than I'm being here. Okay, so now we still need to finish this matched primary join. ACL now goes to the second record. It says, okay, here's employee number two. Let me see if I can find employee number two in the secondary table. And of course, ACL, when it looks in this example, in this data, can't find employee two in the other table. Because we are looking for things that exist in the primary table and the secondary table, we're doing matched primary, remember, ACL will not record employee number two in the result. Now it goes to the last record in the payroll table. It says, can I find employee three in the other table? The answer is yes. So it finds it, and because we're doing matched primary, it records the details of that match in the results table. And there we go with matched primary. Now, I want to remind you about matched primary. There's something that people often forget and that gets them into trouble. So let's do a matched primary join on these two tables rather. So here on the left-hand side, I have a table called invoices. This is a list of invoices issued to our customers. So customer one was invoiced for 5,000. Customer two was invoiced for 3,000. Customer three bought from us twice, therefore we invoiced them twice, once for 4,000 and once for 2,000. The table on the right-hand side is called payments received, and that contains the details of payments received from our customers. You can see customer number two hasn't paid us yet. maybe they haven't yet reached the 30 days, whatever it is that we gave them to pay. Customer 3 has paid us 3 times. Maybe they pay in installments or whatever the case is. But the point is, they paid us 3 times, once for 2,000, once for 1,000, and another time for 2,000. Okay, so now we want to do a match primary join where invoices we decide is the primary table. Customer 1, when we look for it in the other table, we find that customer 1, there's a match, therefore we need to record it in the new table. So far, so good. Now we go to the second record of the primary table. There's customer 2, and we can't find them in the other table. Because we are looking for things that have a match, we are not going to record the details of employee 2 in our, of customer 2 in our result. Now we need to go to the next record in the invoices table, in the primary table. That's customer number 3. Now, does customer number 3 appear in the other table? This is what ACL is going to ask itself. And it's going to say, yes, it does. Now, notice that ACL matched the customer number 3 from the invoices table with the first customer number 3 in the payments received table. It did not stop to think, okay, could the 1,000 for that 1,000 payment for customer 3 actually be the payment for the invoice that we're looking at now in the invoices table? Is it possible that the 2,000 that we are matching to at the moment is actually payment for a different invoice? ACL is not human. It doesn't think like that. So what it does is it simply picks the first match it finds, the first customer 3 it finds. Right, so customer 3 has an invoice amount of 4,000. That's the record we're looking at the moment in the invoices table. And the payments received table, customer number 3, has an amount of 2,000 Rand or $2,000 or 2,000 shillings, whatever the currency might be. So far, so good. Now let's go back to the invoices table because there is another record there. So customer number 3, does it appear in the payments received table? ACL asks itself this question. The answer is yes, it does. And notice again, ACL picks the first match it sees. It will always pick the first match. So this customer 3 that is in the invoices table, the invoice amount will appear as 2,000, obviously, in the results table. And because we picked this 3 in the first 3 in the payments received table, ACL will choose this amount, will display this amount of 2,000. Now, if we look at the 2 original tables, you can see in total, we invoiced customer 3 for 6,000. If we look at the payments received table, you'll notice that in total, that customer 3 has paid 5,000. So 6,000, the total invoice amount, minus the total payments of 5,000 means that customer owes us 1,000 still. However, if we look at the new table, based only on the new table, we notice that customer 3 was invoiced for a total of 6,000. And they paid us a total of 4,000. 6,000 minus 4,000 gives us a balance of 2,000. So according to the new table, customer 3 owes us 2,000. Now that is obviously hopelessly wrong. Because if we as auditors now go and draw up reports and findings and conclusions and whatever else based on this incorrect result, saying, for example, our credit policy isn't good enough because people owe us too much money, whatever it is that we conclude incorrectly, it's a problem. We need to be careful about joining when there are duplicates in the secondary key. When we do matched primary, it's very, very dangerous when you do matched primary. So ideally, what I need to do is before I join any 2 tables, is I need to use the duplicates command on the key fields in the primary and the secondary tables, because those duplicates can cause problems. In the secondary table, they're always going to cause problems. So I would summarize the secondary table to get a new secondary table, and I would potentially, not necessarily, potentially join the invoices table to the new payments received table, the summarized one. I'm saying potentially because sometimes the duplicates in the primary table will also cause problems, and sometimes they won't. The only way to know for certain if they're going to cause problems, if I leave the duplicates in the primary table, is to take a piece of paper and to create fictitious data, test data, and to do a join on the test data on a piece of paper, the way ACL would, with the duplicates in the invoices table in this example. And if in my result on the piece of paper, I still get other problems, incorrect results, that tells me I need to summarize the invoices table as or before joining. If I do not get incorrect results, then it tells me I'm safe to keep the duplicates in the invoices table. But once you start doing these joins more and more, where there are duplicates in the primary and the secondary table, And once you get more used to drawing up this test data on a piece of paper, you'll find that actually you start doing this a lot more in your head, and it becomes easier for you to relate to and to understand. And you then become very comfortable immediately deciding if you can join a primary table that has duplicates just as is to a secondary table. But please never join when you have duplicates in the secondary table. It's a disaster waiting to happen. All right, so that's just a reminder about matched primary. It's a bit dangerous with duplicates. Let's talk about something that you did not learn in the beginner's course. You learned about the matched primary join, but you did not learn about this option called include all primary. So I've gone back to our example of employees. We've got our payroll table again, people we paid, and employee master file. Now I want to do matched primary, which means I want to see who is in the payroll table, but not in the employee master file. So employee number one is in the, excuse me, employee number one is in the payroll, sorry, in the employee master table as well. There's a match. Therefore, I need to write that down. ACL now moves to the next record in the payroll table, employee number two. It wants to see if I can find it in the other table. And of course, the answer is no, it's not there. Usually, we would not write employee two in the results table if we were doing a matched primary join. However, I have specifically instructed ACL in this example to use this option called include all primary. What that option does is it forces ACL to put into the result everything from the primary table, even if there was no match. So because of that option include all primary, I'm forced, and ACL is forced, to put into the result employee number two for 3,000. Now the pay per period column obviously can't just disappear. This is not an unmatched primary join. There are some of these employees, such as employee one, that are on the other table with valid pay per period amounts. So what ACL is going to do is, because pay per period is a numeric field, it will put a 0 in that field. It will not just leave it as a blank. You can't have a blank space in a numeric field. That's a data validity error. So ACL won't create data validity errors. It will put a 0 in the pay per period field because there was no employee two in the other table. Please remember, this only happens for matched, we'll get the 0. For unmatched, that column pay per period would not appear at all. All right, so now I see an employee 3 in the payroll table. That's the next record. Is there a match? Indeed, there is a match. So therefore, because that 3, which is in the primary table, appears in the other table, let's write it down. Now you'll notice, of course, in the employee master file, there is employee number 4. We haven't touched it. There's no arrow going to it. And frankly, I'm not interested in it in this example. The reason the join type is called matched primary is because you look at what is in the primary table. That's my starting point. I want to see what is my primary that appears in the other table. I don't care what's in my secondary that it might appear in the primary. That's not what this join type says. It says, look in your primary table, what is there in the primary table that has a match. So this is my final result for matched primary with the option called include all primary ticked. Now, some people, by the way, will tell you, oh, that matched primary, include all primary is another join type in ACL. So they'll tell you that matched primary and unmatched primary and matched primary, include all primary, are 3 different join types. You can see it that way, but I find from a learning and understanding point of view, it's simpler just to say there's unmatched primary, there's matched primary, and there's many to many, which we'll come to. And matched primary happens to have 2 options, which you can use if you so wish. So to my mind, it's easier to think of ACL as having only 3 join types: unmatched primary, matched primary, and many to many. And then matched primary, of course, just has 2 options that you can choose to use or not choose to use. All right, let's look at another example. Here I will decide to do a matched primary join. Again, so one of my 3 join types. But I decide to choose this option called include all secondary. So let's see what happens. I need to start from our primary table. Okay, does employee 1 appear in the other table? Yes, there's a match. Therefore, I need to put them in my new table. Right, employee 1 was supposed to be paid 5,000 before deductions, of course, and that is what was used to calculate their net pay. Eventually, the gross pay is 5,000. Okay, does employee number 2 appear in the new table? In the secondary table? No, it does not. But now, hang on, should I include it in the new table? Now, when I say match primary, I would say normally, okay, no, don't put it there because employee 2 does not have a match in the secondary. But I see there's an option selected here called include all secondary. Now, should I put number 2, employee number 2 in my result? Well, no, because include all secondary means if something is in the secondary table, make sure it appears in the result. Employee 2 is in my primary table, not my secondary table, so I'm still going to ignore it. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to the next one. Employee number 3, do they appear in the other table? Yes, they have a match. Therefore, I'm going to write employee number 3, the gross pay was 4,000 and pay per period was 4,000 in my results table. Now, I would normally stop here because I've worked through everything in the primary table, but there's this option called include or secondary that has been selected. It says to me and to ACL, go through the secondary table quickly. Check, is there any employee number without an arrow going towards it? And it turns out there is. Employee 4 doesn't have an arrow going towards it. I need to include that in my result purely because it's in a secondary table. I'm being forced to. So I'm going to record employee number 4. I'm going to put employee 4 in my result. The gross pay, of course, is 0. And the pay per period is 6,000. Okay, now I just need to be careful here. Notice in my results table on the slide, I've got employee number 4 in the employee number column. That's not what it would look like in the real world, because employee number 4 does not appear in the primary table. So I would actually have a blank space in my employee number column in ACL if I was doing this in ACL. If I needed to see that employee number 4, I should choose from the secondary field section employee number. So basically my result, if I did this correctly in the slide, the way it's done in ACL, would have 2 employee number columns. And both employee number columns would have employee 1 and 3 in them. But one of the employee number columns would have 1 and 3 and 4 in. You wouldn't have the first employee number column from payroll obviously having employee number 4. Anyway, that's just by the by. Let's talk now about the many-to-many join, which we never talk about in the beginner's course. In the beginner's course, because you're still learning ACL, you've just started, I'll tell you there are only 2 join types, matched and unmatched primary. And in fact, there are 3. Many-to-many is the other one. So I've got these tables here. I have invoices that I've issued to customers. I have payments received. So customer 1 bought from us twice. So this is slightly different from the other invoice data. Customer 1 bought from us for 5,000 and then for 3,000. Customer 2 bought from us only once for 4,000. Then I have payments received. Both customer 1 and 2 have each paid me twice. Now, I want to do a many-to-many join. So what's going to happen is this. ACL is going to create every possible combination it can of the keys. So many-to-many is a match primary join effectively, except it doesn't pick only the first match it sees in the secondary table. It picks every match. So let's see how this works. Customer number 1, does it appear in the other table? If I look at the first record in the primary table, yes, it does. And then I need to record that down because many-to-many is a kind of a matched primary join. So let's see, customer 1, the invoice amount was 5,000. They paid me 5,000. There we go. And that is where the join, the normal match primary would stop. If we were doing a normal match primary, it would only give me that match, and then it would move on to the second record of the primary table. It's only going to match that to the first one. But many-to-many is different. It says, okay, wait. Let me just check before I move on to the second record of invoices. Are there any other matches for customer 1 in the payments received table? And yes, there is another match. So there I can see customer 1 match in that first record of the primary table matches another customer 1 in the secondary table. And so I'm going to write down in my result, customer 1, the same invoice amount, 5,000, and the amount received, 4,000. Okay, now we can move to record 2 because there's no other matches in the secondary table for that customer 1. In the second record of the primary table of invoices, I see there's a customer 1. Now I need to find out, does that customer 1 appear in the other table? Let's have a look. Yes, there it is. I have a match. So that one matches that one. The invoice was 3,000. The amount received was 5,000. Before I move on to record 3 of the invoices table, let me check. Are there any other matches in the secondary table for customer number 1? Oh, yes, there is another one. So that customer 1 also matches the second customer 1. So you can see ACL is generating every combination of customer 1 that it can, all the different combinations. So there I get customer 1 for 3,000 and customer 1 from the other table for 4,000. Now, similarly, if I go back to my primary table, customer 2 has a match. It matches that first one, and it matches the second one as well, because many-to-many will look for every match. Now, if you look at the primary table, you'll see that customer 1 appears twice, and in the secondary table, customer 1 appears twice. 2 times 2 gives me 4 possible combinations. So you can see in my results table, I have customer 1 4 times. And in the case of my invoices table, customer 2 appears once, and in the case of the secondary table, customer 2 appears twice. 1 times 2 gives me 2. So you will get 2 combinations for customer 2 appearing in your new table. Now imagine that you had a primary table in the office with 1 million records and a secondary table with 2 million records. Do you really want to generate 1 million times 2 million records combinations? That is about 2 trillion or something like that, right? Just be very careful. Many-to-many has its uses, but be very careful. You can get a huge resulting table. Now, I just want to talk to you quickly about those options for with matched primary again, the include all primary and include all secondary. Some people get it into their heads that, oh, they're going to make their lives easier. They don't need to use unmatched primary and matched primary on its own. They'll just use matched primary with the option include primary, all primary, and the option include all secondary selected to pick everything, throw everything into one big table. That is one of the worst things you can do. Most of the time, that is not sensible. Number one, from a purely technical point of view, you're taking up unnecessary storage on your hard drive for nonsense. Imagine I wanted to find out which people are in employee master but not in the payroll table, in the payroll table but not in the employee master table. So theoretically, my ghost employees. Unmatched primary would do that relatively quickly. Matched primary with all secondary and all primary selected would pull through everything. Then I still have to do filters in that afterwards. And trust me, that can slow down your processing a lot and give you timeout errors depending on how you do your filters. It's just not worth it. Plus, what also happens is when you have too much data in a table, it can actually cause confusion for the person who created that table. So, you know, if remember, we discussed in one of the other sessions this concept of overtraining in the context of ACL's predict and train, where you give ACL too much information to come up with a mathematical model. Well, we human beings are no different from ACL in that respect. If we have too much information in front of us, we start losing the plot and we start trying to see patterns, or we start seeing patterns that don't exist. So for your own sake, use the options include all primary and all secondary very sparingly. I can honestly say in about 12 and a half years or so of using ACL, I've used the match primary join with both options include all primary and all secondary, maybe only twice. Be very, very, very careful. It's nice to know they exist, but if you're using them regularly, you're doing something wrong. Okay, you're doing something wrong. And you're taking huge chances, you're taking huge risks, unnecessary risks. Now, the many-to-many, again, it's useful sometimes, but please, because it creates such a huge data set, don't use it unless it makes sense, unless you have to. So be aware of the different types of joins, but please don't get carried away with throwing everything into one table using either many-to-many or match primary, include all primary or secondary. It's a very bad idea to use these join types if you have a different method, a better, simpler method. Okay, let's talk quickly about SQL joins. Now, don't go, oh, I don't know SQL. This is not a lesson in SQL. It's fine. Don't stress if you don't know SQL. Again, this is not a lesson in SQL. This is just to make you aware that SQL has different join types. Now, you know that ACL can connect directly to a live database and import from there. Just remember to tell your IT people that ACL's read-only, because they might panic that you're going to destroy their data or something. You can't. It's physically impossible with ACL, you know this, because it makes a copy of what it sees in the database and you get to play with the copy, not with the real data, the live data, should I say. Anyway, so you connect to some database using ODBC, and maybe this database uses SQL. You know that you can do things like joins and filters, etc. in ACL. But if you have a huge data set in your database, in a certain table, it's going to take a longer time to import into ACL, because obviously your laptop doesn't have the processing power of the server. Also, if you need to do joins on a huge data set, it's going to take longer on your laptop because your laptop does not have the processing power of a server. So why not take advantage of the server while you're connected to it and do your filters on there and do your joins on there, so that you have smaller data sets putting through to ACL, which will make the imports faster. Plus your filters and your joins and so on were faster already because they were done on the server using the server's processing power. Now in SQL, there are different types of joins. They don't have the same names as ACL, but some of them correspond to what we have in ACL. Okay, so there's a pretty diagram. Now, in this diagram, we've got two tables, one on the left, represented by the circles. There's a table on the left and the table on the right. And you'll see the section in the middle is colored in a bit darker. That is me in SQL looking for which things are in the table on the left and the table on the right. In ACL, that would be your matched primary join. Okay, in SQL, we call it an inner join. Some people just call it a join in SQL, right? So it's inside that common section. In ACL, as I said, we call it matched primary. Now, they don't have the term the term primary table and secondary table, by the way, in SQL. They talk about the left table and the right table, but it's the same concept. Right, so now I decided to do a different join in SQL. And you'll notice I want to get a result that shows me everything that is in both the left table, the primary table, and the right table, the secondary table, the thing in the middle. That would be matched, primary and ACL. But I also want to see what's in the left-hand table, the primary table, that might not be in this table. It must be included in the result. This in SQL is called your left join. Some people call it the left outer join. And in ACL, this is your matched primary join, but with the option include all primary selected. Now I decide maybe to do a different join in SQL, okay, called the right join, also known as the right outer join. And this would involve something very similar to the join here in the middle. So I would say, show me what is in both of these. So it's like a matched primary almost. But I want to see what's in the secondary table. In ACL, I will get this result by saying I want to do a matched primary join, but I want to include all the secondary. So in SQL, you can start with the table on the left or the table on the right. In ACL, we don't complicate our lives. We say, if you've got your primary, secondary, just make sure your primary table is the one where you can see the exceptions that you're looking for. If there are exceptions, you would be able to spot their details in the primary table. Now, these are three of the join types in SQL. Let me show you some more. We might have to find in SQL this scenario. You notice both circles are completely colored in. So I want to see what they have in common, what's matched in ACL language, what's in the primary table in the table on the left that doesn't appear on the right-hand side, and what's on the right-hand side that doesn't appear in the table on the left-hand side. That's called a full join in SQL. In ACL, we call it matched primary, and then we choose the options include all primary and include all secondary, which, as I said, is something you should use extremely sparingly. It's not worth your while using it most of the time. Now, let's talk some more about SQL joins. Did I tell you, by the way, that there's something called an inner join? I did, right? But there's actually something also called a special type of inner join called an inner equijoin. Oh, and there's one called an inner theta join. And there's one called an inner natural join. By the way, remember there's also something about outer joins that I mentioned in the previous slide. You get a left outer join and you get a left outer equijoin. And then you get what's called a left outer theta join. Oh, by the way, there's also a left outer natural join. Oh, did you know there's a right outer join in SQL and a right outer equijoin? And then there's a right outer theta join. Oh, and we mustn't forget the right outer natural join. But there's more. There's a cross join. And guess what? There's also a self join. Now, let me ask you something. Aren't you glad that you know ACL? We have three join types: matched, unmatched, many-to-many. That's it. End of story. Okay. Now, I'm not saying it's bad that SQL has these join types, but you can see for us as ACL users, this is very complicated. Okay. All these join types we can do in ACL with those three things we have. Everything we have in ACL we can use to do these join types. So it's nice to be aware of these join types, but in practice, I would say for most of us, if we do need to do SQL joins while importing a file from a live database, I would say the first slide I showed you with the inner join, the left join and the right join, those might be the ones that we would use the most. The full join, highly unlikely. So if you want to go and learn SQL, and learn about all these different joins, go for it. You know, it's always nice to know more, but for most of us, this is never going to be necessary knowledge. If we do need to work with SQL in the context of importing data from a database, maybe 3 joins, maybe 4 will be the most that we need. These joins we probably won't need. And remember, ACL has 3 joins: matched, unmatched, and many-to-many. That covers all of these. It's much simpler in ACL. It's designed to be simpler. Now, let me just mention something about this join type cross. The cross join is really what we in ACL would call the many-to-many join. So that would be our many-to-many join. There is Well, it's kind of. It's actually kind of. It's not exactly how many-to-many join. It's how many-to-many join, but it pulls through more records. So the cross-joining SQL is a matter of interest. Will match employee 1 with employee 2 as well. For those of you who've done some mathematics, the cross-joining SQL basically creates a Cartesian product using the key fields. Okay, but basically for the rest of us who don't know anything about SQL, the cross-joining is like how many-to-many join, except it doesn't match just employee 1 to employee 1. It matches employee 1 to employee 2 and employee 1 to employee 3. It matches literally everything in every key field. Okay, that is useful sometimes when building a database. It is very, very rarely useful in the context of ACL and auditing and risk management and finance and so forth. But there is definitely a way to do it in ACL, very simple way. Okay, so these are the different SQL joins. Now let's talk about quickly the join interface in ACL. Now, some of you have been using ACL for many years, and you would have noticed that we used to have the join types under the More tab, and then they came up with this screen. Those of you started using ACL relatively recently, you've only seen this interface. Now, I must say I'm not entirely happy with this interface. I find it very confusing. So I want to go through this interface with you, okay? That first description there, that is actually your matched primary join. Please do not read the rest of the story and secondary, first, secondary match, blah, blah, blah. Don't read it. Read only the first 2 words. That's your matched primary join. And if you look at the circles to the left, what area shaded in, the area in the middle, what is common to both the primary table, that's also in the secondary table, that's your matched primary. Please don't read the rest of that. That's terribly confusing. I've written to Galvanize to tell them I think it's confusing. Whether or not they will agree with me or not is another story. I know some of our clients who used to use the More tab found this confusing. Maybe some people find it better. I don't know. But I personally don't like this, the way they've put these descriptions. I think these descriptions are a bit confusing, some of them. Fortunately, they haven't messed up the unmatched primary join. That's still called unmatched primary. Okay, so there it's called unmatched primary. This here, this is a very misleading description. It's a very confusing description again. Look at the circles. Okay, we're looking for everything in the middle, so there's a match. Every time you see something middle, there's a match. So we know this is matched primary. And then it's got everything on the right-hand side from the secondary table. So this is matched primary, include all secondary. Please don't even look at this description. It's horrible. It's very confusing. Look rather at this diagram. So this is the second you see something middle, say, oh, we're looking for matches. And now why is the shaded, the rest of the stuff in the secondary table? Oh, because we're including more secondary. Please do not learn that new description because it is misleading, it is confusing. In addition to which, when we write scripts in ACL, we use these words, matched and secondary. We don't use that funny description. We use descriptions more like this. Okay. Now, the next one here, I know it looks like it applies to this diagram, but please, it doesn't. Again, this is confusing because you're not sure sometimes, especially when you're learning ACL, which diagram goes with this. There is no diagram here for this. This one, again, just learn, it's actually called many-to-many. That description is horrifically confusing. I'm sorry to say, but this is horrifically confusing. My job as a trainer is to help you to understand. It's not to hide or sugarcoat the truth. Right, so please, this is a many-to-many join. I don't care what that's called. It's called many-to-many. In scripting, you'll see a description similar to what I've written there. Not that. Then, there is this weird description. Again, don't look at the description. The only one that's actually correct is unmatched primary. The other one that is half correct is this matched primary. No other story, ignore that. This all matched primary and all secondary. Let's just see, what on earth are they saying? Let's look at the picture. There's something shaded in the middle, which means this is matched primary. That's involved in here somewhere. The circle on the left, I see, is completely colored in. So even if there was no match, it was included. Oh, the circle on the left is the primary table. So it's matched primary, include all primary. That's what it is. Again, this is closer to what you will see when you write an ACL script than that horrific description up there. And then finally, we have this here. Don't even read the description. Look at the picture. If you look, the section in the middle is colored in. So that means something about matched primary. I see the circle on the left is completely colored in. Oh, they want me to include all the primary records. And I see the circle on the right is colored in. Oh, they want me to include all the secondary. So this is your matched primary join with the options include all primary and also the options include all secondary selected. Okay. Now, just by the way, those of you who came in the beginner's course, You might not be used to it yet, even if you did the beginner's course a while ago. You might still be getting confused about relate and join. Just so that you know, the result that you get from the relate command is the same result you would get if you did a match primary join with the option include all primary selected. If you do a normal match primary join, it will not give you the same result as relate. If you do a match primary include all secondary, you will not get the same result as relate. If you do an unmatched primary, you will not get the same result as relate. If you do anything, any join, you will not get the same result as relate. Only if you do match primary with the option include all primary selected. Don't choose include all primary or secondary, different result from relate. So from a purely results point of view, if you decide for some reason to use join instead of relate, understand that the only way you're going to get the same result as relate is if you use match primary with only one option selected, include all primary. There are technical differences as well. I'm not going to go into it here in the session because that's irrelevant, but please be careful. Join and relate are two different commands. They almost always give very different results, and there are various differences. Please be careful, especially if you've only started using ACL. Stick to the rules for if you've started using ACL. The join is strictly for which people, which employees, which document numbers, which suppliers, which whatever on the other table or not in the other table. Don't use relate to do that when you start learning ACL. And similarly, relate is only for when you want to look up information from another table, kind of like Excel's VLOOKUP. Don't use relate to check is someone in the other table, not when you start learning ACL. It's dangerous. Okay, now that I've gone through that bit of a side with regards to relate, let's go do something in ACL with some of these joins, should I say. So let me just remind you of this, how to do a simple unmatched primary. I choose my primary table payroll, for example. I want to see which employees are in here, but not the master file. Therefore, I start here because I'm looking for people that are here. Okay, so I need to go to data. I need to go to join. And I need to join this to my secondary table, which in my case is the employee master table. The key field is employee number. In the other table, that key field is also called employee number. Just remember, key fields do not necessarily have the same names. They often do, but not always. Rather use the data in each field, in each table to guide you. If it looks like both columns in both, if you see in the one table, column called employee number, and you see a column in the other one called worker ID, but you can see in the worker ID column, it's actually employee numbers when you look at the data, then worker ID is your key field's name in the other table. Right, and then I want to choose which primary fields I want to see. So I want to see who is this employee that was paid, but that's not in the master file? What was their gross pay? Where did they work? Whatever information I decide is relevant. And I need to put the result in a new table. I'll call this ghost employees because that's what I'm looking for here. Possible ghost employees, people that are in payroll but not in the master file. Now, I'm not going to bother to choose secondary fields here because I'm going to do an unmatched primary join. There's no point in saying to ACL, remember, tell me who's not in the employee master file. Now ACL, go back to the master file, find these people that aren't there and tell me their details. There are no details in the master file for people that aren't there. All right, anyway, let me just choose unmatched primary. And see, notice when I choose unmatched primary at the top, ACL grays out the secondary field section, says, okay, don't waste your time choosing something from there. These people aren't in the master file, the ones you're looking for, so I can't tell you information about the city where they live from the master file. Anyway, when I click OK, I get the result that's familiar to a lot of you. There are my two possible ghost employees. Fine, normal unmatched primary join. Now, I decide for some reason I want to go to the payroll table and I want to do a matched primary join. I want to see which people are on payroll and the master file. Remember, I have no audit objective in mind most of the time in this session. I'm just going through the mechanics again and the issues around join. So I go to data, join, and I decide I want to join this to the master file. Employee number is the common key field. I'll just choose all the fields this time just to make life a bit easier. And I'll choose all the fields from here as well. I want to see all the fields. Now that's usually too much in practice. And I'll call this new table something silly like payroll matched, right? Now notice the match primary join is selected by default. So when I want to do match primary, I never in practice go and check what join type is selected. I know by default it's that. So only if I want to do something else where I go choose one of the other options here. Now I click OK. and I get 42 records. Sorry, the time's going. 42 records in total, right? I get 42 records in total. So let's just have a look. The payroll table has 44 records, but I only got 42 records in my match table. That's because, remember, 2 of the people I found earlier were ghost employees. They were not in Unmatched. So when I look for matches now, I won't see all 44 employees appear in my new matched table. Only 42. 2 of them are missing, the ghost employees. Okay. So there's my join type, my match primary join done. A quick reminder for those of you who did the beginner's course. Now, I decide, again, I want to make payroll my primary table and Unmatched my secondary, data join. Now, I want to do a matched primary join, but I want to choose the option include all primary. So let me first focus on this section at the bottom. The employee number is common, and I'm going to pull through all the fields from here. I think from this other table, I'll be a bit more selective. I'll just pull through the first name and the last name. See, sorry, first name and last name. Right. I'll call this payroll Unmatched matched primary, or I'll just say Inc primary. So now I've included all the primary. Now, I need to choose match primary, include all primary. Now, I know the first one is match primary. Don't read that other nonsense. I know this one is unmatched primary. That one is fine. I've got to now try and look at the circles. I know because I want to do match primary, I've got to find something with the circle shaded in the middle. That's shaded, but remember, that's match primary. The thing underneath is many to many, so forget that's not one of those 2. It's definitely not unmatched. It's got to be one of these 3. Now, let's just see. They all have the middle circle colored in. I need something where the left-hand side is colored in. That's colored in and that's colored in. But only the left-hand side should be filled in, should be colored in. That one shaded in, only the left-hand side. That one, the right-hand side as well. So this must be my matched primary, include all the primary, that one. Okay, so now I'm going to click OK. And I get 44 records. Because even though 2 of my employees in payroll did not have a match in the master file, I'm forcing ACL to pull them through now. Now let me just show you here, up here. Quickly. These 2 first names and surnames are completely blank because these employees 108 and 109 did not appear in my master file. So let me just quickly go show you my ghost employees table. There they are. 108 and 109 were ghost employees. They were not in my master file. That is why I cannot find their first name and their surname. Okay. Right, that's why I can't see them in the result. All right, now I decide to do another join. I want to join the payroll table to the master file again. But I want to do a match primary join, and I want to choose the option include all secondary. So let's see what happens. I need to choose my master file here. I need to say the employee numbers are the same. And then I'll just choose everything from here. Why not? And from here, let's just see. I'll choose employee number and first name and last name, why not? Okay. So I will call this new table payroll Unmatched matched. I'm going to include all secondary. So I'm not going to touch the include all primary option. So I've got to look for, because I'm going to do a matched primary join, I've got to look for where the section in the middle is colored in, with shaded in. There's those there. But I know that first one is just plain matched primary, so I need to forget that one. This doesn't have a diagram, that's many to many. So it's one of these 3 again. Now I want to include all secondary, so I need to see where the middle and only the right-hand side are shaded, that one. Okay, so that's matched primary, include all secondary. Okay, so I can now click on OK. And I get 43 records. Now you might think, okay, hang on, 43. Now in the payroll table, there were 44 records. 2 of those people were ghost employees. So theoretically, for the moment, I'm thinking I should have 42 records here because of the match, and I would be right so far. But if we do a separate test, I haven't done it here for you, but if we do a separate test, we'll discover there's someone in the master file that we forgot to pay. They do not appear in the payroll table. So the 42 matches from the primary table, the ones that are not the ghost employees, plus the 1 person that comes from the employee master file that we forgot to pay, that makes 43. And here you can see, what is the check number for this 1 employee? There isn't one, because we forgot to pay them. What is the department they work in? Well, based on the payroll table, we don't know because we forgot to pay them. What's the employee number based on the payroll table? We don't know because they're not there. Now notice I deliberately pulled through the employee number from the other table. Because when you do this, choose this option, include all secondary, be aware that you're looking for things that are in the secondary table that might not be in your primary table. So you might not have the employee number in the primary table, so it's rather better than to include the key field from the secondary table as well. Okay, so employee number 90, I see Stefano Maloney, we forgot to pay them. Right, but we've got 43 records, everything that was in payroll and embossed, as well as those things that are embossed but not in payroll. And finally, with the match primary join anyway, I want to choose include all primary and include all secondary. So I'll go to data join, and I'm going to join this to my secondary table, which is embossed. And I want to use the key field employee number. And I'll just choose everything, all the fields from here, and choose all the fields from here. And we'll call the new table payroll, embossed, matched, include primary, include secondary, right? I'm including everything from the primary table, everything from the secondary table. Now I need to find that option, or basically both circles need to be colored in as well as the middle, right? So match primary, include all primary, and include all secondary. Click OK. And I get 45 records. There were 44 records in the payroll table. 2 didn't have a match, but they're going to pull through anyway because I chose the option include all primary. So I will get 44 records. This is before I go look at the secondary table to see what I might have missed there. Now there's one employee I missed there, that's Stefano Maloney, I forgot to pay him. So I'm going to pull him through as well from the secondary table, hence I've got 45 records. I pulled through everything. Okay. So now I can go have a, look at whatever I need to do with filters, etc. But again, please be careful. Don't use this join type match primary with both options selected often. It's going to cause problems for you most of the time. It's only when we don't have a better option that we use this. And as I said, that's very, very rare. Right, there's one more join type I haven't done with you yet in ACL. That's the many-to-many. And of course, we know how it works in theory. You match every employee 1 with every employee 2, with every employee 1 in the other table and so forth. But why on earth would we use it? Well, let me give you 2 examples. Let me first go to this table called trans. Now, in this trans table, I have a list of invoices we issued to our customers. So one of our customers was given invoice 12852, another one 12853, and so forth. You'll notice here, invoice 12857 appears more than once. Now, that's not actually a problem in this particular table. The reason being, this table gives me a detailed breakdown of what was in each invoice. So this customer bought 2 different things from us, maybe pens and then also pencils. So you would look at, if you saw the invoice, you would see on one line, it would say, they bought pens. On the next line, it would say, this is how many pencils they bought. So it's normal to see duplicate invoice numbers in this particular table. Anyway, I'm going to look for duplicate invoice numbers just because I can. I want to see which invoice numbers appear more than once. And then I want to pull through some details. I want to see for these ones that appear more than once. In other words, for the invoices that have more than one line of detail, what were the amounts on those particular invoices? I'll put this quickly into a new table. I'll call this trans dupes. And of course, people in Swaziland are going, why is he talking about undertakers? Right, there's an undertaker in Swaziland called dupes. Right, so I click OK. And there we go. There we have our new table. So far, so good. Until I start looking at the result. It is normal to have the same invoice number more than once based on what I've told you about the trans table. It is not normal, however, to have a line item with a negative amount. So I decided I want to investigate these strange duplicates, the ones with the negative values on them. So it seems easy enough. I'm going to say, show me where the amount is less than 0. So far, so good. I'll quickly extract this to a new table because from the beginner's course, filters disappear. I don't want to lose this result. So these are my trans dupes, the problems I need to investigate. I don't understand why there are negative amounts on the invoices. Anyway, so now I have this. But I'm looking at this result and I've just realized something. I have lost all the details of that invoice 12857. There is at least one other line item for this invoice in the trans table. And I might I think maybe it would be useful to know what the details are on that invoice, the other line items. So I realized, hang on, this invoice number appears once here in my result, but maybe twice or 3 times, whatever it is in the other table. If I do a normal match primary join, this is only going to pick the first 1 to 857. It's only going to pick the one line item. So I'm going to try a many to many. I'm going to do a join, and so I'm going to join this to my trans table, and I'm going to use the, the invoice number. Yes, so use the invoice number as the key field. Invoice number. I'll pull through all the details from this table that I'm working with, my primary, and all the details from the other. So every time this invoice number appears in trans, it's going to pull through every single match for that invoice number, so every single line item. So I'll just call this trans exceptions. Okay, and of course, this will pull through a lot of details. I need to choose many to many. This is this one without a diagram associated with it. Remember that diagram is for matched primary. And I click OK. And I get, instead of 2 records, 4 records, because this invoice number appeared twice and this one appeared twice in the other table. Now you can see the match here. So this invoice had those 2 line items. I must just be careful how I read this result and how I present this to someone in a report, because I'll get confused if they see those 2 columns like that. But now pull through the details. So one of the uses of many to many is to pull through details from the original table based on the file we imported. We often get a situation, or we sometimes get a situation in ACL where the way we analyze our data forces us to drop a lot of the details that might be useful for further investigation or reporting purposes. We can then join the results table back to the original using many to many to pull through the details. Now, of course, some of you might have already realized what I could have done with this particular scenario instead is I could have said, make trans the primary table and join that to the duplicates of the problems table, because in the problems table, we have only one instance of 1 to 857. That one will match at 1 to 857, and so will that one. And that is perfectly fine as well. So I would prefer doing a matched primary because I'm trying to get into this habit of sticking with my simple joins, unmatched primary and matched primary, without any options as far as possible, and only falling back onto my big guns like many to many and matched primary with some of the options if I have no choice. But there will be times in your data, and you will only know when these times are, when it actually happens to you, when you're doing actual procedures in auditing. And there will be times when you have no choice but use a many to many to pull through the details. Matched primary for some reason will not work. You will only know if matched primary will not work when you do the actual procedures and you see your actual data. There's no way of knowing in advance. Okay, now there's another use of this matched, this many to many. Let's say, right, I've got this table AR. So I've got a date column, invoice date, and I've got another date column, due date. And I want to know how many working days are there between them. Now, it seems simple enough so far. So I'm not going to talk about many to many join just yet. We'll get there. So I'm going to go to my table layout, and I will create a computed field, and I will call it working days. Right? I want to know how many working days there are between 2 dates. And as you know, there's a function in ACL, those of you who've been on the beginner's course, called workday. And the one date is invoice date, and the other date is due date. I'm going to delete that option that's not relevant to us in today's session, and I'll just put this in the view. All right, let's just wait for ACL so I can get back in there. Okay, sorry, we're waiting for ACL now. Okay, there we go. My computer's a bit slow today. Right, so there you can see working days. Now, I know some of these are negative. That's because this invoice date is before the due date. So I'm going to quickly do a filter so I don't confuse myself. I'm going to do a filter to say, let's only focus for the moment on where the working days are greater than or equal to 0. I'll extract it to a new table quickly. I can look at the other things as the exceptions that they are later, find out why they're exceptions. Let me analyze further for the moment, only those things that make logical sense in the real work environment. Okay, so I will call this AR working days. Okay. So now I can see, right, there were 23 working days from the 14th of August to the 13th of September 2018. But hang on. That is assuming there were no public holidays in between. So if the 15th of August, for example, was a public holiday, then that answer shouldn't be 23, it should be 22. So the workdays function doesn't remove public holidays, it only removes Saturdays and Sundays, assuming that's when our weekend takes place. So I've got another table here called public holidays that I've imported into ACL. And this will tell me when something was a public holiday. Now I must be careful. The 16th of June 2018 was a public holiday, but it was a Saturday. Now I don't want to remove it a second time from my from those working days. I don't want to remove it a second time because I've already removed Saturday. So I need to remove where it's a Saturday or a Sunday. Now, in this particular year, 2018, there were no public holidays on a Sunday. So I just need to remove the Saturday. Show me where it's not Saturday. I'll quickly extract this to a new table and call it public holidays 1. Right, I'm adjusting the public holidays table so that I no longer have the weekends there. I don't want to account for the weekend days twice. All right, fine. So now I'm thinking, how do I remove the public holidays from this working days table? And I'm tempted to say, okay, for example, maybe I could use a matched primary join, see if there's the 1st of January in this table. And a lot of us make that mistake when we first start learning ACL. The fact is, though, there is no 1st of January in this table. I mean, let me just quickly sort in ascending order. The first date I have here is the 29th of January. The public holidays are almost never going to correspond to the transaction dates, almost never in the real world. So basically, even though there are date fields in both tables, there is at this stage no common key field. Don't think, oh, well, they both have dates, that's a common key. That's not how it works. That's like saying, in an employee master file, I have an employee's date of birth, and in the payroll table, I have the date when they were paid. Oh, there's a common key field because they both have dates. No, just because they have dates doesn't mean they're the same thing. A date of birth is very different from a pay date. Similarly here, the transaction date, the invoice date is very different from the public holiday date. 2 different events. Be careful. Don't fall into the trap of seeing, oh, dates. There are dates in both columns. That must be the common link. There is no common link here. For there to be a common link, there must both be dates, yes, but you must actually see most of the time 1st of January or whatever the public holiday is. You must be able to find it in the other table. So we have a real challenge here now. Now, in practice, when I want to remove public holidays, I tend to use scripts. But most of, in this particular session rather, we're going to assume we haven't done scripting yet. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to remove public holidays without a script. I need a key field. So I'm going to go to my table layout here, and I'm going to create a field called key. And I'm going to put in a default value of T, character data. Now, it doesn't have to be the letter T. You could put the letter U, the letter B. You could put a word like orange, like one of my clients did. You could put a number, not instead of character data 1, 2, 3. You could put a whole sentence. My favorite key is XYZ. It doesn't matter. The point is I'm creating a field with some nonsense in it, and I'm going to create the exact same field in the other table. So I'm going to just see the letter T everywhere, or the word orange or whatever it is everywhere in this table. Let me go to my public holidays 1 table and do the same thing there. I'm going to go create this key field, C underscore key, and I'll put the same value I had in the other one, in this case the letter T. The point is I now have common fields that I can join on. That field with the letter T appears in both tables. I'm going to do a many-to-many join now using that key field. So it's going to combine every letter T with every letter TSCs. So there's 11 records here, and I think 772 in the other table. So I'm going to probably have a few thousand records in my new table. Now, because I'm doing many-to-many, it's kind of a match. It's looking for matches. The direction of testing isn't important in this case. It's going to generate every combination, no matter which table I start with. So I'm going to go to data join. I'm going to choose many-to-many once it's no longer grayed out. Let me just join this to my AR working days table using my key field. I'll just pull through, all right, I'll pull through everything except the key. I don't need the key. And from here, I'll do the same thing. I'll pull through everything except the key. I don't need to see the key, right? So I'll call this AR AR and then public holidays. Okay, this is a join of the 2 tables. I want many-to-many. Let's see what I get. Right, I get this result. Because every T match, every T, I'll get all sorts of combinations. Now I'm going to drag this one date here next to due date so we can see better what's happening. Right, so 1st of January was a public holiday. See how many times it appears here? It's because it matched every single T in the AR table. Notice, by the way, how many records I have in my new table. 5,060. That's 11 times 772. So now if we look at this, at this first record, we go, oh, okay, the date ranges we were talking about were 14th of August, just drag that there to unconfuse myself, 14th of August to 13th of September. But 1st of January was definitely not in that date range. I'll just drag this here as well to unconfuse myself, right? So I can't say, well, take 23 working days minus 1 day, and that will give me the correct number of working days. That doesn't make sense in record 1. That's not in the date range. So I need to look for where this public holiday is actually in the date range. So I'll do a filter. I'll use my between function. So I'm going to say, I want to look for public holidays that were between something and something, right? So this is date. I want to see where that date is between. Now, normally I would just type a physical date, but I don't want to type a date because these date ranges change. I'll say ACL, whichever record you're in, look at those columns. So look at the invoice date column, ACL, and look at the due date column, and show me that record if that date is in that range. So show me this first record if 1 January is inside this range. Of course, it won't show me record 1, but let's see what it will show me. So it shows me, for example, this record here. Because the 9th of August, that public holiday was somewhere in that range. Now, I noticed that 9th of, so I wonder now, does this range, well, appear anywhere else in this table with maybe, let's say, 10th of August, if 10th of August was also a public holiday? That's possible. So I'm going to do a summarize now. I'm going to say analyze, summarize. I want to summarize on, let me just think carefully, maybe the date range. I want to see if that date range appears more than once. And I think that's it. Let me just quickly click OK. And I want to pull through, by the way, the number of working days. I don't want to lose that information. So the number of working days as it is at the moment. And I'll put this in a new table. I'll call this AR summary. So my tables don't have very sensible names right now, but it's fine. And I get this result. So you can see that date range appeared once. In other words, there was 1 public holiday in there. That date range appeared 8 times. There were 8 public holidays there. So now I can create a computed field, and I can call this, okay, I'll just call it working days 1, but this is obviously working days without the public holidays. Whatever was originally in the working days column, remove how many public holidays you saw. And that there, once my computer wakes up, tells me how many working days there were after I removed the public holidays. Okay, so this is how you can remove public holidays, partly by using the many-to-many join and without using a script. But just to give you an idea, many-to-many join is sometimes useful. Okay, well, that's it for the different join types. I hope you found it useful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next session.